Welcome to another Apollo Papyrus episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, my interview guest has written multiple fiction novels, including, among others, Road to Elysium. Additionally, she is also a screenwriter. Her name is Kay Oliver, and here's my interview with Kay. K.A. Oliver, welcome to Apollo Papyrus.
I am happy to be here. Thank you.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. I am a celebrated author. I've spent over 30 years in Hollywood working on films and TV shows and found that I needed a little bit more creative control over my characters and took the leap and became an author. I am now an award-winning author and in Who's Who this year. I got inducted in 2024 into the Who's Who for my literary work.
One of your books is called Road to
Elysium.
Elysium.
Road to Elysium.
Elysium. Okay. Without spoiling too much about Road to Elysium, what is that about?
That book is about a man who's lost all hope due to losing his family in a tragedy, but life takes a hold. Something happens in his life that is unexpected. He makes a knee-jerk decision to do something, and it changes everything. And it's about redemption, it's about love, it's about charity. It's based on, inspired by a true event. So just think It's a Wonderful Life meets Blindside.
Okay. That leads right into my next question. Road to Elysium has been described as It's a Wonderful Life meets The Blind Side. Why is this, and what were true life events that inspired Road to Elysium?
So It's a Wonderful Life, though a lot of people consider it a Christmas movie. If you watch it, it's a movie of giving and love, really. So it just happens to be happening in winter. So this book actually has a holiday ending of love and charity. What inspired it is I was at home watching a regular news, and those little tiny little stories they do at the very end, the uplifting segment, under 30 seconds, was a story about a guy who was walking down the street and a young man walked up to him and asked him to show him how to throw a ball. Well, I went online quickly to find out, I need to know more about this story. And there was nothing. There was a little blurb and that's about it. And I thought, oh no, this story has to be told. So I went ahead and wrote a fiction novel based on that action.
I'm going to explain something to our non-American viewers before I answer the next question. In the United States, the three main network evening newscasts, the CBS Evening News, the NBC Nightly News, and ABC's World News Tonight, will usually have a lighthearted story at the end of each newscast on most days, and local newscasts in the United States will typically have like a lighthearted story leading into like the sports segment.
Right. That's what it was.
Getting back on topic, you've written several other books that have been published. Without spoiling too much of your other books, since we've covered Road to Elysium, what are your other books called and what are they about?
My first book, which is also a multi-award winning book, is called Disturbed Tombs. It's a historical fiction and mystery about Dr. Kaili Worthy. It's actually a series. She is a archaeologist, and she makes a worldwide discovery about the ability to speak with mummies when you mix the paranormal research with actual mummies. And then her husband, Derek, is a police officer. He's a captain of a police station, and he has different murders different crimes to resolve. And maybe not. Maybe he uses his wife's new discovery to help solve some murders. And the third book just came out on Monday. So that one's called Disturbed Remains, but it's a 3-book series so far. I have a couple of romances, Shooter's Treasure and Whispering Lessons, both Westerns, but Whispering Lessons is also historical, happens in 1870. And then I have a couple of books. I have 8 books out total.
What are some awards that your books have received, and what does it feel like to receive a lot of awards for your work as an author?
I will tell you that when I got my first award for my first book, which was first place, historical fiction, Disturbed Tombs, I was shocked because that was my first book. Who wins awards on their first book? I don't know. Some people do. So anyway, every time I win an award, it's exciting. I won Book of the Year for Disturbed Tombs in 2022 and Book of the Year for Road to Elysium in 2023. I have won first place prizes in the Book Fest competition, which is international. I just won the American Legacy as a finalist for them, also a worldwide huge competition. And I've won first and second places for a couple of books. And every single time it's just kind of an honor. It's I knew I loved writing. I have a passion for writing. I love storytelling. I love watching people and putting what happens in life into my books. So a lot of people tell me that they relate to the characters very well. And I hope that's what my readers are enjoying. The first book, people have come away and said, "Oh, you've given me so much to think about." And then when Road to Elysium came out, people are saying it transcends the pages, that it applies to their lives as well. So that is just an honor unto itself.
Are all your books self-published, traditionally published, or hybrid published, or did you use multiple publishing methods for your works?
No, they are all self-published. I did try to reach out to some literary agents. That is a lot of work. And is, well worth the effort if that's what you want to do. But I just love writing. So I just went and when I published my first book, self-published, and then started winning awards, I thought, well, I'm just going to go this way. It's not a lot of profit, just so you know, if you're a self-publisher. I have broken past the normal amount that people receive for self-published books, but because of the awards, I think, and the word of mouth. But overall, I do all my self-publishing.
What is your writing process like?
I am not a plotter. So I am not someone who sits down and goes, chapter 1 will be this, chapter 2 will be this. I sit down at the empty page. I have an idea in my head. I have most of the story in my head, and I just start writing. And I can write 3 or 4 chapters a day if I want.
You were a screenwriter prior to transitioning to an author, and tell us more about your work as a screenwriter.
I worked in Hollywood for over 30 years, and I got to work with Lou Wasserman, who owned Universal MCA, and I ended up working with Jeffrey Katzenberg and Steven Spielberg. I wrote a lot. I had a person, if you, to explain that, is when you work for somebody, they get to see your scripts first. If they don't pick it up and pass on it, you can shop it out. If someone wants to pick it up, then they get to see it last again. So that's a first and last. I was told repeatedly, because I like strong female characters, that they're not marketable. And as you know, that's not true, because my books are winning awards and I have strong female characters. So I guess they think on film it's not marketable in the theaters. But I think that's changing when women are becoming producers and are getting those films out and creating those characters. But it's changing very slowly. Hollywood still has gender bias issues for sure.
How demoralizing was it for your screenwriting work to be reviewed by people who didn't view female-centric stories as marketable? And of course, there's an analog to that in the sports world, where female sports wasn't really viewed as marketable until Caitlin Clark came along.
Well, yes, because people started picking up the story, and as people started picking up the story about, her fantastic success, And then started also talking about the women who are already in the WBA with their famous success. All of a sudden, ratings shot through through the roof. So if Hollywood wants to make female movies marketable, they have to advertise them correctly. They have to create real characters and not the screaming woman who trips and falls and get eaten by the monster. That's not what we are. That's the reason I took the leap. That's the reason I said I can't continue working in an industry that, tends to belittle women day in and day out. Are they trying to change? Probably with the new lawsuits, but no studios have been sued, just the producers or directors, whoever they're going after. But that's why I took the leap and started doing novels instead.
Did your work as a screenwriter influence your writing as an author, and if so, how?
Well, that's interesting because I started writing in sixth grade where I entered a speech contest and and was told that my work was so good that they really thought my parents wrote it. It wasn't my parents, it was me. So I knew at the very beginning that I loved writing and that I had a knack for it. So I kind of got influenced into going into Hollywood because of my writing, because I like storytelling. I started with being an editor and then moved into other areas. And from there, you learn story structure. You get a feel. You know how you want to put something together. You know how to tell the story. You know how to do foreshadowing if you like to do that. I like to just catch you off guard myself. But and so then when I went to go write my novels, I had a good understanding of the beginning, the middle, the end, and how to make those twists and turns of my novels. Hint, hint. Um, that you'll be reading along and all of a sudden, bam, it's like, wait a second. I had this idea going to the right and you just turned everything to the left. And I love doing that. So I kind of learned that. That's a kind of a Spielberg thing. He likes to turn a laugh into a scream or a scream into a laugh. And I enjoyed doing that as well.
What is the best advice you have for people who have a background in screenwriting who want to become book authors?
Ooh, start writing. Seems to be the hardest writing tip that I give, that I repeat constantly, because I don't think there's a day that goes by that someone doesn't say, I have a novel, I just haven't sat down and written it, right? We all have novels in our heads. You have to create a space to write in, and then you have to dedicate at least 15, 20 minutes a day to writing, to get into the habit of writing. And then I tell them, once you do that, don't stop at the end of a chapter or the end of a sentence or end of a thought. If you're going to stop for the day, stop in the middle of a sentence, because when you go back and you read that, read up to the end of where you stopped, you have momentum already because you knew the idea that was there and you can pick back up and you don't have as much writer's block that way. So those are the two things that really, if you don't do those two things, the book's never going to happen. So you really need to sit down and just start writing. The third thing I tell everybody, because I am a nut for getting everything correct, don't worry about it in your draft. Just write. Just get the ideas on paper, because great novels are not made in the first draft. They are made in the edit stage. And so just write. Don't worry about punctuation or anything or spelling or whatever. Just go through it all, get it on the paper, go back and use your spell check and grammar check, and then make sure you have a great editor to work with. A lot of people can be hired online as editors, and that's the way to do it. Don't worry about those first drafts.
You made a very interesting suggestion that I have never heard from anyone else about if you finish writing for a day, stop mid-sentence. That would seem very counterintuitive to a lot of authors, but you made a very interesting suggestion.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, if you have a hard time picking up, and getting that momentum going again, if you stopped in the middle of a sentence, you go back, to pick up where you left off, and you'll read that sentence. You'll go, oh yeah, that was the thought about X, and you'll continue writing. immediately instead of having a writer's block. Oh, how am I going to start chapter 2? What am I going to do? You know what I mean?
Kay, thank you for appearing on Apollo Papyrus. You were an amazing guest.
Well, thank you. I enjoy it a lot.
It was wonderful to interview Kay, and it's amazing that her books have won numerous awards. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to write and read your passion. Bye for now. Remember to subscribe to the Apollo Papyrus YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/@ApolloPapyrus and the Apollo Papyrus Substack newsletter at apollopapyrus.substack.com. Y'all can visit the Apollo Papyrus website at campaaronapollo.wixsite.com/Apollo Papyrus and follow Apollo Papyrus on Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr at Apollo Papyrus. Copyright 2024, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.